All right, guys. Welcome to Coding Camp Day 4. We hope you watched our Coding Camp Day 3 video, which is on the YouTube channel. And without further ado, let's get to it. So, Devon, you want to explain what we're doing today?
Right. So last class or last video, we covered variables with Java. And like you said, you can watch that video if you need a bit of a refresher. We'll be doing a really quick refresher today as well. But today, the bulk of the video will be keyboard input with Java. So we will be teaching you how to have lines of code in your program that allow you to type in values, numbers, um, of whatever you're choosing may be. So we'll be teaching you how to do that. And then next class, we'll teach you if statements, and that combined with variables, keyboard input, and print statements, we'll be coding blackjack. And then the next class will be the speeding tickets lab, which will be asynchronous.
All right, so we're continuing Java today, and we'll be reviewing variables, as Devon said, and then learning keyboard input through a fun project that has something to do with road trips. You'll see. So if you could please go to CodeHS, you could code along at home, or you could watch us and code on your own on a different time. But I'll go to codehs.com right over here. And if I'm logged in already, so it'll take me to this page. I'll click on Sandbox, make a new program. We'll call it keyboard input. Create program, Java main, and we'll go create program. And it should take me to this page. And if any of these instructions are going too fast for you, we went in detail about it in the previous video, so you can watch that. But we'll name our program. We'll call it keyboard input. Remember, we have to name our file the same. Keyboard input.java, and we'll begin. So we're going to start with a quick overview of what we did last time, which was variables. So let's start with integers, right? We make an int. Let's call it int year. And remember, they go with type name equals value. So the type of the variable is int, integer. The name will be year. And what's the year? Well, we're in 2022. So that's the value of the integer named year. And let's make another variable. What was the other type of variable we did? It was a double. A double. And Devonch, what's the difference between an int and a double?
Right. So a double will allow you to have numbers that do have decimal places in them. Ints are just used for whole numbers.
Exactly. So we'll make a double, and let's do pi again as we did last time. Pi equals 3.14. And lastly, we'll make a string. And what's different about a string than a double and how we assign a value to it?
So with strings, we have to have because strings use words. Their value is a word, so we have to have that word in quotation marks.
Exactly. So I made a string, I called it word, and I'm going to assign it a value of coding. So I put it in quotation marks, and the word that is assigned to the variable word is coding. And now let's start with printing out these variables. So we'll do a basic system.out.println, our basic print statement line, and we'll print out year. If we run our code, we can see that it prints out year, which is 2022. I can change this year to 2023, and it prints out 2023. So whatever value I change the year to, it'll show updated in this print statement. So that's the use of variables. And I can do the same thing with the actual string word. So I can say system.out.println or ln. I can say I love. And how do I attach variables to text?
Right. So once again, we covered this last video. And to do that, we have to have a plus sign, which serves as the attaching factor in Java. And then we can just put the name of our string without quotation marks.
Exactly. So the name of the string is word. And if I show if I run this program, it says I love coding, and I can change this word to anything. I can say I love pancakes, and it's the same thing. And it updates and it shows that whatever the new value of this string is, it shows in this print statement. And lastly, I can do calculations with variables. So I do system.out.println, and I can say pi times 2 is, and how do I do calculations?
Right. So we'll have to have that attaching factor, which will be the plus sign. However, after that, we need to use the multiplication sign, which is the asterisk in Java, and we'll have to do pi times 2.
Exactly. And you can see when I run this program, it shows pi times 2 is 6.28. And again, I can add more numbers, 3.14159. It'll show an updated pi times 2 with the rest of the decimals. All right, so that was a pretty, we kind of flew through what we did last time, just to refresh your brains a little bit. But if you're confused by any of this, please watch the last video, and that should answer most of your questions. So now we'll put an empty print line statement under this, just to separate it from our next topic. So now we'll move on into actual keyboard input. Right? What is keyboard input? Devant, you wanna take us through this?
Keyboard input allows us to enter values into the program. And that's what we've been working up to this entire coding camp. We already have these three types of variables. We have int, double, and string. We'll mostly be working with ints and doubles for keyboard input because we will want to be entering in numbers into the computer. However, the computer will then store these valuables into the int and the double variables. So there are two things we need for keyboard input, and we're going to need to modify the starter code that CodeHS always creates for us. The first thing we'll need to add is this statement: import java.util.scanner followed by the semicolon. And
So
Yuvi, do you want to show us? Yeah, could you show us where we want to put that?
exactly. So we can see here, this is the starter code, right? The starter code is this top segment, this public class keyboard input, and all of this statement at the bottom. Before, we've never really changed the starter code. We create a program, it's all automatically there, and we start coding between the brackets. Well, if you guys think back to Pen Tool with our second Scratch lab that we did on day one, the Pen Tool category wasn't actually in Scratch, right? We had to add it in as a separate sort of package that we wanted to add into Scratch. So this is something that it works really similarly with Java. Keyboard input isn't in the basic Java package or basic Java program, as you can call it. You have to add it in, right? If you want to ask the user questions like how old are you, or what's your favorite color, something like that, you have to. That's not something you can do automatically with Java. You have to add it in. So you can see if I take import java.util.scanner, I can copy this and I can paste it. You actually paste it at the top of your starter code. So import changes colors because you're importing a new package into Java. You're importing a Java package, which is a utility, and it's called scanner. So you don't have to know too much about what this means, but all you really need to know is that anytime you want to do keyboard input, you have to have this at the top of your program. Otherwise, it won't run. So take a second to copy this into the top of your program. Feel free to pause or rewind if you got confused by the explanation. Then what's the second thing we need to add?
Right. So we had scanner at the end of our first statement, and scanner is the type of package that we'll be putting into our program. So we'll have to have a second statement called scanner input equals new scanner and then system.in in parentheses. So this is similar to that type name value system that we were working with when we started variables. Except now we're using it for scanner, which is the package we use for keyboard input.
Exactly. So type is the type of package is scanner, right? For variables, we did the type of variable, but the type of this package is it's called a scanner, and the name we're assigning it is just input, right? So I can show you where we actually put this. So we put this at the top of our regular code. So you can see we have our starter code, and then where we start coding regularly is right here. So if I paste this in, scanner input equals new scanner system.in. So I'll explain what this is. Again, you don't have to know too much about what each of these words mean. You just have to know you have to put this at the top of your code and this in the body of your code for you to do um, uh, keyboard input. So scanner, it's obviously the type. Input is the name. I can name this anything I want. I can name this input, my name, UV, whatever I want. I'm just going to name it input equals I'm creating a new scanner. And if you guys remember back, it's actually right here. So for print statements, we do system.out, right? Because we are putting an output. The output is going in this output box over here. But I'm actually creating a system.in because it's an input. I want to receive input from the user. So if the computer asks me how old I am and I give it an answer of 18 years old, that's an input I'm giving to the computer. So I'm creating the system.in. So before we had the system.out, now we're using system.in. And now this is what your new starter code should look like over here. And feel free to pause at any time.
Right. So whenever you create a project that you know you're going to be doing keyboard input in, you always want to have those two highlighted statements in your starter code.
So the example I was using earlier is the how old are you example, right? So if I want to ask from the computer, right, it starts with a simple print statement, system.out.println, and I want to ask, how old are you? Semicolon. And if I just try to run this right now, it gives me how old are you? But I can't type anything, right? If I'm trying to type something here, it doesn't let me type anything saying actually answer the question, how old am I? So and how do I do this? Well, 18, if I'm going to say 18, that's an integer. So I want to give an integer back to the computer. And Devansh, what is keyboard input for integers?
Keyboard input for integers is going to look just like this. We'll have to have this statement for the value of our integer. It's all about type name equals value. That's how variables work. So we'll have the type, which is integer, int, the name, which we can give it any name we want. We'll probably use age, but then the value will have to be input.nextInt and then two parentheses with the semicolon. And that will tell the computer that we want the value for int to be something that we type in from the keyboard. We want it to be a keyboard input value.
So let's see this in action. I'm gonna do we have a variable called age already? No, we do not. So if I make an int and I call it age, but I know I'm gonna answer 18, right? So I'll put 18. But what if someone else answer it? What if my parents answer it, right? They would say whatever age, 50, 51, 52. So I want this value to change depending on what I enter for the answer to how old are you. So what I do is I put int age equals input dot next int with parentheses and a semicolon. So this assigns age the value of whatever the next integer is entered. So if whatever I enter for this answer to this question, it'll make age have that value. So let's test this out, right? Let me output the value of age.
Well, before we do that, let's run the program and see what.
Yeah, let's try that. So I run the program, and now you can see it actually lets me enter a value, right? I can enter a number here. So let me put 18, and that's it. So what should happen now is that the integer age, this variable, should have the value of 18. So how can we test that out, Devansh?
We can test that out by using print statements. So right now, we have just told the computer that we want to store 18 inside of the integer age, inside of int age. But we didn't tell it to print it out or output it in any way. So now we are going to output it just by doing a print statement and typing in age.
Yep. And so theoretically what should happen is that whatever I enter here should be the value of age. And then the system or the computer will print out age. So if I run the program, it asks me how old I am. I'll say 18. And it'll print out the value of age, which should be 18. If I run it again, and let's say I put 21, it gives me back 21. If I run it again, I put 49, it gives me back 49. So whatever value I'm entering for how old I am, that is what's being stored in this variable called age.
And now it doesn't matter too much, but there's a lot of formatting that's involved in Java, especially with print statements. Remember, there are two types of print statements. There's print and println. Now, if we wanted to type our age on the same line as how old are you, because that's how it usually works. You usually type after the colon in regular English. If we wanted to do that, we just remove the ln from that statement and we'd run the program again. And that would allow us to type our age in the how old are you, and then it would print it out on the next line.
Exactly. So we printed or we responded to the computer by saying we're 60 years old, and it gave us back the value of age. So let's do this with doubles now, right? Let's do this with a different type of variable.
So for keyboard input for doubles is pretty much exactly like integers. The only thing we have to change in our statement is instead of input.nextInt, it's input.nextDouble.
So let's do this with our example of pi, right? If the computer is asking, let's have the computer ask, what digits of pi do you know? Just a simple question like that. And let's create a new double variable, right? Because why would we use a double in this case, Devansh?
We'd use a double because pi is a number that has decimals.
Exactly. So we'll use double and we'll call it digits.
Now, the reason we can't use pi here is because we already have a double for pi. If you look at line 9, we have double pi equals 3.14159. In Java, you can never have two variables that have the same exact name. You have to have different names for all your variables.
So I'll create double digits and let's do exactly what we did for integer, but we'll call it input.next double. And again, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but capitalization is really important for Java. So these i's have to be capitalized. So if your program might not be working, it's because the I and the D have to be capitalized. And all the capitals are really important. So your typing should look exactly like what I'm typing. Input.next double has the capital D. Input.next int has the capital I. Now,
So
yes, Devansh.
yeah, let's run this and see if it works.
So first it's asking us how old I am from here. So I'll answer 18. Gives me back 18. Now it's asking me what digits of pi do I know? What if I just know 3.1? So the
As you can
value,
see,
yep.
nothing happened. So similar to the last time when we just asked how old are you, what the computer has just done, it has put that 3.1 and assigned it to the value of double digits. And this is an example of keyboard input working with a question. We can create questions like what digits of pi do you know? And then we can answer them ourselves, or we can have somebody else, maybe a friend or your parent, answer into by typing in their whatever digits of pi they may know.
So I'm gonna let's see if the value of this variable called digits is exactly what I put in. So I'll just print out digits. So what I did is I'm just I'm printing out the value of this variable called digits. So if I run the program, similar to what I did for age, how old I am again, 18. What digits of pi do I know? I'll say I know 3.14. Gives me 3.14. If I run it again and um, I want to do it with more digits, 3.14159. It gives me 3.14159. But what if I want to add in the attaching function that we learned earlier to this? How do I do that?
So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to combine variables with text. We're going to have a println statement, and then we're going to have to give an answer. The computer is going to give us an answer back for how many digits of pi we know. So we can have something like, you know that pi is, and then like a blank, which in that case would be our attached variable. So we'll have to have the plus sign, and then all we'll have to have is digits because we've stored input.next double has stored whatever answer we give into digits.
And if we run this program, again, it's asking us how old, what digits of pi do you know? I'll put 3.1415, and it gives us 3.1415. If I run it again, what digits of pi do I know? I'll put 3.1. Gives us pi is 3.1. So
As
this
you can
value,
see,
yep,
this is a really good example of a question and answer system that you can utilize with Java. Keyboard input really helps us with that. You can have all sorts of prompts or questions, and then you can put values in them, and the computer will sort of simulate a response to those questions.
so let's move on. That was our introduction to keyboard input. Now we'll do an actual project with keyboard input. That is, it's actually very practical, and it shows you the real world application of Java. Last time in the last lesson, we did what did we do, Devansh? We did the burger project, and the burger project. You didn't really get to enter for yourself how many burgers you ate because we didn't learn keyboard input back then. But now we're actually learning keyboard input, and we can have this question and answer exchange between us and the computer. So this project is called Road Trip. Devansh, what is Road Trip?
So we've all heard of road trips. Maybe you've even been on a few or one. We're going to create a program to help us plan a road trip. If we want to take a car down to a destination within the United States, or even maybe outside of it, as long as we can get there by car. And we're going to create a program to help us plan that. We're going to calculate, or we're going to want to input the vehicle mileage, which is how many miles your vehicle that you pick can run based off of 1 gallon of fuel, the total miles of the trip, our average speed during the trip that we'll be traveling, and then the average price of gas per gallon right now. And then we're going to be outputting. So this is what the program will help us calculate. It's going to help us calculate the gallons of gas that we're going to use for the entire trip, the total cost of that gas, and then the total hours that we're going to have to drive. So as you can see, it's a very good way of planning a road trip and making sure that we know what we're getting into before we start this big trip.
Exactly. So let's start our road trip, and we'll go system.out.println, and we'll call it road trip.
And just for the sake of time, we're going to be deleting the two sections of code that we've written already before this, just so we don't have to keep going through the how old are you and what digits of pi do you know prompts. But if you guys need to review that, or if you want to redo that, just rewind the video and you will be able to see that again. But for now, we'll be deleting them.
So
And
road trip
you can
project.
go ahead and delete the top.
And we'll take this section out too, just to make it a little easier to look at. Okay, so road trip project, we see that there are 4 inputs, right? And an input is what we are putting into the code. The computer is going to ask us what is the mileage, and we want to put in what the mileage is. So it'll be very similar to what we did before, right? We'll always start with asking a question. System.out.print, and we'll ask, and we're not going to use ln since we want it to be on the same line. So we'll ask, what should we ask a bunch?
Let's ask vehicle mileage in miles per gallon, and then put a colon after that.
So what is the vehicle mileage in miles per gallon? So that's our question. And what type of variable should we use? What should we store this value in?
We should probably use a double. Even if the mileage may be a whole number, it could be a decimal, and then the calculations that we'll be doing after it might result in a decimal answer. So, like we said in the last lesson, it's always better to use double variables when you're working with numbers because they are very versatile. Ints can only store whole numbers, but doubles can store whole numbers or decimal numbers. So it's good practice to use double variables for numbers.
So we create a double and let's call it double mileage. And double mileage will be equal to input dot next double with our two parentheses and the semicolon. So what's happening here is that the vehicle we're entering the vehicle mileage, and then this computer is storing whatever value we enter as the variable mileage. Now let's do it for the next one, miles in the trip. So we want the computer to ask us how many miles are in the trip or total miles of the trip, and we want to enter a value, and the computer stores it as a certain number or as a certain variable. So we'll start the same thing, and you can see if you can try to do this by yourself. It's pretty similar to what we're just doing. Computer's asking a question, we give an answer, computer stores it as a variable. So feel free to pause at any time and to try doing it by yourself, and we'll be working along as through the instructions. System.out.print, and we'll ask
How many miles are in the trip?
how many miles are in the trip. And let's create another variable, and let's call it distance. Double distance. So again, the type of variable is double, the name is distance, and we want to store it. We want to store whatever value we enter as how many miles for the trip in the variable called distance. So we'll do another input dot next double. And we're doing double, we're doing input dot next double because our variable is a double. If this was an int, then we would do input dot next int. And what's the third prompt? Well, it's the average speed during the trip. So follows the same exact thing. Computer asks us, what will be the average speed? And what do we store it in? Well, we store it in a double. Double, let's call it average speed. And same exact thing, input dot next double. And lastly, we have what is the average price of gas per gallon. So try doing this one by yourself. We did 3 of them, and now try doing this last one by yourself. And Devanch, what should we put for this last one?
This last one will have the computer ask us, what is the average price of gas?
Semicolon, double, and what should we call the variable?
Let's call it average gas price.
Next double. So user input, you can see it gets a little repetitive, right? Because once you learn the basic theory behind it, it's pretty easy to grasp. It's just the same thing over and over again, right? You ask a question, the computer asks a question, the computer gives you a prompt, you enter a value, and then you create a variable to store that value. So let's first test our code out. Let's run the program. What is the vehicle mileage in miles per gallon? Let's pick a random number for now. Let's pick 20. How many miles are in the trip? Let's say 100. What will be the average speed? 40 miles an hour. What is the average price of gas? $5. So nothing was outputted because we don't have any output statements yet. We just have now all of these variables, mileage, distance, average speed, average gas price. Those are all stored as these values that we just entered. So what should we do now, Devansh?
Well, now, like you said, we're going to have to output some of these values and calculate the three outputs that we want to create. So those three outputs are gallons of gas used for the entire trip, total cost of gas, and total hours driven.
So let's start that. Let's put a print lines, an empty statement again right here to separate the two sections of our code. And let's begin. So the first thing is, what do we want to output? The gallons of gas used for the entire trip. How should we calculate that?
Well, to find the number of gallons, we're going to need to divide the distance, the total miles in our trip, divided by the mileage, or how many miles we can go on just 1 gallon of gas.
So let's have an output prompt, right? Gallons of gas used. And what calculation should we do?
Distance divided by mileage.
Distance, and let's put this in parentheses, distance divided by mileage. If I give it some more space, you can see we have, this is the first output, gallons of gas used is, we attach this calculation to it. Distance, the variable distance, which in this case right now is 100, divided by mileage, which is how much the car gets per gallon of gas.
Yep.
And if we run our program now, let's pick 20, 100, average speed is 40, average price of gas is 4. So the gallons of gas used, distance divided by mileage, 100 divided by 20 is 5. So the calculation works so far. So that's the first part.
Now, yeah, let's do the other two parts, and then let's show them how we can use this in an actual real life setting.
Total cost of gas. How do we do that?
Right. So that is going to be calculated by finding the total number of gallons we're using, which we actually just did by doing distance divided by mileage. But then we'll have to take that and multiply that by the average price of gas. So this will be a bit of a more complex calculation. We'll have to have that distance divided by mileage, which gives us the total number of gallons, and then multiply that by the average gas price.
And what's the multiplication symbol?
It's the asterisk.
Times the average gas price. So the total cost of gas, this is just plain text, we attach it to the actual calculation. So distance divided by mileage, total cost of gas should be gallons of gas times the gas price. So the number of gallons of gas, we already did that. It's distance divided by mileage. Then we multiply that by the average gas price. And let's do the last one. Total hours driven. How do we calculate that one?
Well, that one will be pretty simple. We just need to take the total miles, which is the distance, and then we'll need to divide that by the average speed that we're traveling. And that will give us the number of hours that it will take us to get to our final destination.
So the total driving hours in quotation marks. And we want to find total driving hours. So we do total driving hours plus,
which will be distance divided by average speed.
Total distance divided by average speed. Put that in extra set of parentheses.
And to clarify, that average speed will be in miles per hour. So we will be going how many miles per hour? That's the speed limit on whichever road we're taking.
So I'll go up here and I'm going to edit our prompt to say in miles per hour. So we can tell the user which unit to put it in. And so let's go over our calculations. Gallons of gas, distance divided by mileage, total cost of gas, the distance of the trip divided by mileage, times the average gas price. The total driving hours is our distance divided by our average speed. So now let's test our program in a practical sense. So this is how it would really be used in the real world. And there may be some apps out there that do this. And so this is kind of our first mini app that we're making. So vehicle mileage and miles per gallon. Devansh, what car do you want to drive?
Let's drive a Honda. You can pick the model.
Let's do a Honda Civic. So we'll look up Honda Civic mileage. 2022 Honda Civic, 33 city, 42 highway. All right, let's pick 42. Mileage in miles per gallon is 42. Now, where are we going, Devansh? Where are we starting and where are we going?
Let's start in our hometown, Dallas, and let's go to New York.
Dallas to New York distance. It is 1,548.3 miles. 1,000, what was it? 1,548.3. 1,548.3. Now, what's going to be our average speed?
We'll probably be taking the highway, so it'll probably be somewhere around 70.
70. And what is the average price of gas? Average gas price in Dallas. Current average 4.694 per gallon. 4.694 per gallon. And you can see it does the calculations automatically, and it gives us all of these values that would be really helpful. It shows us we use almost 37 gallons of gas. The total cost of gas will be around $173. And the total driving hours, if we drive continuously, should be 22.1 hours. And you can try this on your own once you code this with all different types. You can try going from Colorado to Montana, or you can try going from anywhere to anywhere with any car you want at any speed you want. So this is kind of a fun project where you can do some back and forth with you and the computer. And I think we've taught you keyboard input. So even with our last lab, which was the burger lab, you can try to do that on your own, making it keyboard input.
And keyboard input is definitely super customizable. If we wanted to, like UV said, we just have to find the mileage for whichever car we want to drive. So if you wanted to drive a Lamborghini from Dallas to New York, you just have to find the average gas price that, or yeah, the average mileage it gets. So as you can see, since it's such a supercar, it doesn't get much mileage and it uses up a lot of gas. So it only gets 18 on the highway. So you could put that into your code and see what the new statistics will look like.
So that's it for today. That was user input for today. We used our variables. We used print statements. We used the attachment that we learned last lesson online, and that's keyboard input for today. So thank you guys for coming. For watching, and that's all for today. And see you in our next video.